Nick, we were just talking before we started recording. It's kind of back to some weather from your native land as we get ready for this ball game. You got to be happy about that.
Yes, to be clear, Minnesota weather. Despite what some people like to say that I'm from Canada, I'm not. Pretty close, but I've never actually been to Canada. But yes, it is more similar. But I think we have snow back home in Minnesota, so not quite that level yet. But it is chillier here, and it's football weather. Frankly, I mean, if you're a football player, I think you'd have to love a little cooler weather like this, considering how warm it has been.
Absolutely. Football weather for what's going to be a massive matchup for the Alabama Crimson Tide, really the SEC West on the line. Just what's been the focus of your coverage this week as you get ready for Alabama and LSU?
I think it's just an LSU offense. I mean, it's hard not to think about that group. A, because Coach Saban and players have talked about it quite a bit, but also you look at the statistics. I mean, this is a fantastic offense. I mean, it's no secret they have success. Lead the country in scoring. Jaden Daniels is a Heisman candidate quarterback. He's first or top five in several passing categories. He can run the football. Uh, They've got Diggs, a really good running back. They've got two receivers who combined for 20 touchdowns. So LSU can score. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Alabama's defense can counter that because I don't think it's going to face a tougher test this season.
And speaking of that Alabama defense, obviously didn't get off to the start they wanted to against Tennessee, but it had a great finish, blanking the Vols in the second half. Just from your perspective, how did Alabama's defense get better as that game went along?
Yeah, I think just handle the tempo better. That can be tricky. And granted, I think the fans really helped with that too. That's something that Coach Saban and the players have talked about, where that tempo can be disrupted with a friendly home crowd, so to speak. And so I think that just handle that tempo better after Joe Mel. But man, that feels like a month ago now. That after that bye week, I had to go back in my memory a little bit as to what happened in that game because it goes by quick. And so yeah, it was definitely an impressive effort. And I just thought that I just had a better time with that speed that Tennessee uses and just the quickness and really those forward down stops were huge. To be able to do that against that offense that can run that well, the run defense really got short up and really looked good against Tennessee, especially in that second half.
Yeah, great second half for the Alabama defense. The offense can say the same thing with how quickly they scored coming out of the locker room after halftime. And it seems like this offense keeps adding something a little bit different each and every week. Just where are your thoughts on Jalen Milroe and where this Crimson Tide offense stands heading into this game?
Yeah, I think he keeps getting better. That's been the biggest thing for him is no, he's not perfect and no quarterback is, but I think that he's finding ways to learn from his mistakes and to make sure he's not making the same ones. And he's really having a solid season. I mean, I think it's because of the quarterback play that Alabama's had over the past however many years. It can be easy to lose sight of the season Jalen Milroe's having. I mean, he still is one of the better passers in the country in efficiency. Jaden Daniels is the best, actually. So another tough measurement, so to speak. But Jalen's a solid quarterback, and he's gotten better. And I just think that to me, just that offense goes as he tends to go. And part of that's the nature of the position. Part of it's just who Jalen is and the leader he is. But I think overall, I've been seeing improvement. Doesn't mean he won't ever make mistakes, but I just overall he seems to be being that point guard that Coach Saban wants, and I've been impressed by Jalen more often than not.
So the Crimson Tide ready for the LSU Tigers, and this game could very well come down to special teams. And Alabama's lucky to have Will Reichard back for another season. And Will Reichard, the subject of a feature story from Mr. Kelly in the Tuscaloosa News. What can you tell us about what you learned about Will Reichard? Obviously, we want fans to go to the paper or the website to read the full story, but if you could, just a few tidbits from your Will Reichard deep dive.
Yeah, well, if I shared everything, it would take probably it's a 2,000 word story, so I'm definitely not gonna be able to give it all away. But yeah, it was really fun. I just he's become such a legend in Tuscaloosa that and really the state of Alabama that I just wanted to collect as many stories as I could about this guy. And so some of it's football, some of it's off the field, some of it's about his dog, Denny, aptly named for Bryant Denny and Denny Chimes, and so he's Alabama through and through. But it's really fun to hear people in his life, some cool stories like a dispute about on a duck hunting trip. There was a time that he got spotted internationally. So just all kinds of fun, just frankly random stories that some have something to do with the others, some don't. It was just really fun to get to know him on different levels and different stories about him. And one of those stories, actually, this week it's fitting. His first offer came from LSU. he was in Coach Orgeron's office and got that offer, and I got to hear that story from someone else who was in that room at the time. So all kinds of stories, all kinds of things going on there, and so it was a lot of fun to write, and I hope folks will check it out.
Yeah, he's not far from becoming the NCAA all-time leader in scoring. Already has that for the SEC, and we've seen him get some All-America, some All-SEC recognition before. But is this kind of the year that he cashes in an award season, you feel like?
I mean, if he keeps up with this pace, he's perfect so far. He hasn't missed a kick yet. And his perfect season in 2020 was great, but the volume wasn't quite there as much just because that offense was so good. And partly too, they didn't have as many games because what 10 during the regular season during that COVID year, but and I think they finished with 13 games total. But you have to check my numbers on that. It feels so long ago now, but yeah, I think for him, he's at the volume he's going. He not only has been perfect, but he also is kicking more. He had big kicks. He had a 50-yarder against Tennessee, right? I mean, so Will's had some. He stepped up clutch for him, and so I think if there's a year for him to really rack up awards, it's probably this one. And obviously, he could miss a kick. He probably can afford to and still rack up some awards. But if he stays perfect, I mean, it's going to be hard not to give him all the awards.
We look forward to that, and we look forward, of course, to Saturday's game, Alabama against LSU. But then just a couple days later, the focus of Tuscaloosa will shift to Coleman Coliseum, a men's and women's basketball doubleheader. I know you covered SEC Media Days in Mountain Brook. Just what have you learned so far about Nate Oates and this Crimson Tide basketball team that will start the season this Monday night?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of intrigue around a lot of guys on that team just because it looks so different from a year ago. You've got guys like Grant Nelson and Jaron Stevenson and just a full roster of guys that you just don't necessarily know what to expect. But you know they have pieces. It's just how those pieces fall. And I think that it's pretty clear they don't have a Brandon Miller. I mean, most teams don't. That's a once in probably a decade kind of talent. There's a reason he was the top college player last year drafted. So they're probably not going to have a guy like that. But you don't necessarily have to. I think in some ways, if you have a team that's a little bit more just well distributed, you can't have someone that other teams can key on. That can really help you in March, especially if that player gets cold. And so for Alabama, I think it's really intriguing to see kind of how they do, but also how they do post Charles Bediako, because losing him, obviously he didn't have the same maybe name recognition that a Brandon Miller did, but he was so key for what they did last year. He was that anchor of that defense, and Alabama in its years that it's won the SEC under Nate Oates has had a guy who can basically make up for mistakes defensively of other players. It was Herb Jones a couple seasons ago, and it was Charles Bediako a season ago. I'm not sure if they have that guy, so defense might be a work in progress. I'll have to see how that pans out. But for me, I'm just intrigued to see how this all goes together. And really, this is a new era for Nate Oates because he's without his guys, Antoine Petway, Brian Hodgson, Charlie Henry. And so this is a completely different staff. And now he has to deal with the challenge of that Nick Saban's had to with staff turnover and trying to keep that same standard. So I'm just really intrigued, Roger, frankly, just to see what this team looks like, what they do, where they might stumble. It's just, for me, there's a lot of questions, and I'm excited to get some of them answered soon.
Alabama basketball, Alabama football, it's all happening, and Nick Kelly is covering it for the Tuscaloosa News. Nick, just thank you so much for your time. Have a great time this weekend and spilling into next week with basketball coverage. Thank you for your time with us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network.
Thanks for having me, Roger. It's an exciting time of year. November is such a fun month, and I'm ready for it.